Ecuador. Antes de dar inicio a la presente mesa de trabajo, queremos mencionarles algunas indicaciones a cada uno de ustedes. Solicitamos mantener el silencio durante las diferentes ponencias a presentarse en esta mañana. De la misma manera, queremos recordarles que el registro de asistencia se estará desarrollando al dirigirnos al COFI y al reintegrarnos también a la jornada de actividades. Los equipos de traducción serán devueltos al finalizar la presente jornada en esta mañana. Y también queremos mencionarles que en el transcurso de la misma se estará entregando algunas hojas para que ustedes puedan plantear sus preguntas a los panelistas. Hoy desarrollamos la cuarta mesa de ponencias, la misma que estará presidida por el doctor Juan Pablo Suárez, vicerrector de investigación de la Universidad Técnica Particular de Loja. Reiteramos, solicitamos mantener el silencio para poder desarrollar la presente jornada. Bienvenidos.
Muy buenos días. Continuando con este sexto Congreso CREAD Andes y sexto encuentro virtual Educa Ecuador, hoy tenemos una mesa muy interesante de discusión con una participación internacional de muy alto nivel. Vamos a empezar esta mesa de hoy con la presentación de George Ubax. Bueno, voy a hacer una breve semblanza, voy a leer su currículum y bueno, voy a utilizar una versión que está aquí del currículum que está en inglés. George Ubax is a Managing Director of EATU, the European Association of Distant Teaching Universities. EATU is a European institution association of leading universities in online, open and flexible higher education, and is the heart of the modernization agenda of European universities. George Ubax is responsible for the development and support of the EATU network, policies and execution of its goals in online, open and flexible higher education. George Ubax is coordinator of the e-excellence movement on quality assurance in online, open and flexible education and leading the ACDE UNESCO focal point of QA in online education in Europe. Dr. Ubax is graduated at the State University of Leiden and Erasmus University Rotterdam on public administration with specialization in European integration. So, welcome today.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation of coming actually back here to Loja. I was here some 5 years ago, and I'm happy to present today some progress that you have made in the past years, and especially in the last year on quality assurance and online education. Thank you. I'm going to report on that, especially on our peer learning activity that we organized with ENCRA. So in the last year, actually, we have done about 5 action lines in relation to quality assurance and online education. I will report a bit on the survey that we've done on accreditation of quality in online education, our ED2 ENCRA peer learning activity, the questionnaire that we organized in preparation of this PLA. We did some country reports on the changing pedagogical landscape within Europe, and a SWOT analysis for the ICD focal points. To start with the survey that we did on accreditation and online education, we got a request from our members within Europe. Some had problems with the accreditation of their online programs, so it was time to have a survey on what is then actually the problem, what is hampering further innovation in this field, and we got responses from 15 European countries on questions related to the national frameworks and regulations about the institutional developments within the universities and current practices in relation to online education. I'm not going to present all the questions, but I picked out two main questions for which we got responses. First main question was, is online distance education recognized by your national legislative and regulatory frameworks? Well, to this question, we got a response of about 50% says it is in place, and 50% it says it is not in place. Does that immediately also mean that there is a problem? Actually, the legislative frameworks are largely permissive to blended and online education. We see blended online education all over Europe. But, so they are permissive, but on the other hand, if they are not giving a real strategy or incentives by the government to it, it's also not stimulating further innovation in this field. So we believe that there is still work to do in that sense. And the universities that are operating within these current frameworks that are not fit for online education, they are operating actually within what is allowed, what is accepted, and what is recognized. So the innovation is hampered by these frameworks. The second question, important question is, does your quality assurance agency adopt specific criteria for blended online and distance education? There we see that about 72% does not have specific indicators or criteria for that. We see, also based on this survey, that most are handling this by having experts in e-learning on the review team of the quality assurance agencies. But we talked to ENQA because we work closely with ENQA. So we representing for ED to the universities and ENQA, the quality assurance agencies. We talked together about how could we, instead of separately working on this, ENQA with a working group on e-learning, we doing surveys, having the quality tool on e-excellence, we should work more together and bring the stakeholders together to make progress. So we organized this peer learning activity for quality agencies, universities and governments to talk about how can we further innovate education and what is our role in this. So in total, you see we had about 48 participants there, of which were 18 universities and 12 quality assurance agencies. And some governmental bodies. But I believe this is really a milestone within the European development of quality in online education, because we were never sitting together on this, in this formalized setting. And this was a two-day event. And of course we started with the question, why this PLA? First of all, we see that there is an emerging development within universities that they are not offering only degree education, but are also going to offer continued education and open education. Well, online education is supporting this. Online education is supporting the enhancement of campus-based degree education by blended education, and online education is supporting continued education by increased flexibility and scalability of offerings. So online is very important in that sense. Next to that, we see also that education is important within the changing world, meaning that now in the current world, people have prolonged careers. A career is now 45, maybe even 50 years for people, and you can't build on an initial education that you received between your 18th and 25th year to build on the rest of your career. So continued education is going to be even bigger than campus-based education in the future, and companies need these lifelong learning support by online education. So that is the framework in which we were operating and underlining the importance of online education. And then the aim of the PLA, what was to be gained from this 2 days meeting and the dialogue that we started in these 2 days. First of all, it is about identifying the next steps in the development of quality blended degree and online continued education between the stakeholders, universities, governments, quality assurance agencies and students. And from this exercise, we want to learn what are the roles we are playing, what are our challenges, needs, the expertise that we are in need of. So we're bringing this all in an overview. Like I referred to at the start, we also had a questionnaire in preparation of this PLA. And in this questionnaire, we asked for the stakeholders, what do you think are the main challenges that we are going to come up with? So before I'm going to the ways forward per stakeholder, just listing here the main challenges identified. It's about missing governmental European strategies and frameworks for innovation. It's about institutional strategies, cultural change, new expertise that is needed, student support within an online environment, funding for innovation, increased workload for staff, and so on. These are, before we had the PLA, already challenges that we foresee. Within the 2 days exercise of the peer learning activity, we looked into the ways forward per stakeholder. So here you see at institutional level, these are the challenges, the tasks for the universities in this respect. We have to empower teaching staff by continuous professional development of the teaching staff, giving them also maturity model reference on further innovation. We have to develop teaching learning departments supporting staff in course design. We have to create peer groups and subject area networks to learn from each other and exchange good practices. We have to organize evaluation and research to make sure that what is working well is identifiable, it can be proven, so that we know where the funding is going, should be going, and develop multimedia labs. This is on the part of the institutions. For quality assurance agencies, we have a different list. It's about making quality assessment supportive for blended and online programs. First of all, we have to, within quality agencies, we have to create an open mind to new ideas, new methods, new pedagogies. We have to develop new criteria for assessing innovation. So also the innovation and the innovative power of a university, as well as the capabilities, the capacity of the staff within a university to further innovate. That is a new area for, to be part of the quality system. So we have to evaluate teacher competences for blended online teaching, provide guidance also. We foresee that quality agencies also have developed expertise and guide universities as well. Share good practices also amongst the quality assurance agencies at a European level. And important is that we identify experts in online education and involve them in the review teams of the quality agencies. Coming to the national governments, here there is an important task to develop strategies and frameworks that support innovation in education. It's also having a wider view of funding is not only for the bachelor master, it's not only for course delivery, it's also about funding innovation. It's about risk-taking innovation, so universities need to receive extra funding for that. At the European Commission level, well, specific for Europe in this case, it's about developing strategy for digital education, and importantly, it's about providing funds for international exchange of expertise. The dialogue, that is what we started within this PLA, and that is what we're going to bring forward for the coming years. There is a role to support the ways forward just identified. We create this dialogue, and institutions in that will focus on the strategies for digital education, the internal quality framework, but also the support of their staff and continuous professional development of their staff. Quality assurance agencies are focusing on adapting and fine-tuning new indicators, criteria, and sharing good practices, and governments finding drivers for further innovation and setting the right strategies for that. What is EDTU doing as a European Association of Universities, representing a lot of expertise within our membership in this field? We provide the e-excellence model. It's the benchmarking instrument for quality in online education. Here we offer an open source tool for universities to assess their e-learning performance, find benchmarks where they can improve on, and develop a roadmap with the support of excellence experts to further innovate their education in e-learning. Next, EDTU is offering expertise under the program called Empower. Within Empower, we have 100 experts within EDTU, so all over Europe. They are categorized by 12 fields of expertise. So we have about eight experts per field of expertise related to online education. And they have two tasks. One is, within your pool, keep up to date with the latest developments, state-of-the-art and research for your field of expertise. And secondly, share your this expertise and your experiences from practice to universities all over Europe. And we do that by webinars, we do that by publications, but also on-site visit to universities and place the expertise within the context of the expertise needed within those universities. It has a lot to do with change management, and so we support these universities by connecting them to experts in that field. Here you see some of the fields of expertise. It can also be about e-assessment, knowledge resources, course development. We have about 30 webinars per year, and you can visit them for free. We have a series of webinars planned in June on e-assessment. To finalize, like yesterday already mentioned, we are doing a SWOT analysis for the ICT focal points. This is not a full overview, but I just wanted to point out some of the main strengths here. It's about strong presence of virtual learning environments within Europe. We have many good practices to show in Europe. We have leading universities, often Delft and Edinburgh are mentioned as leading universities in blended education. And we have created now this dialogue between the stakeholders. Weaknesses within Europe are missing institutional strategies. Focus is much on research, like anywhere else in the world. Online competencies are not enough developed. We are missing incentives for change. It's always very difficult to find the incentives for the staff to make the change possible. We are missing guidelines, criteria, and indicators. But I often see, also in the discussion yesterday, there was much reference to new indicators and new criteria. Indeed, we need some. But on the other hand, we agreed within Europe with the quality agencies that we mostly have to look at how to extend the view of our criteria that we're already having. So if we have criteria for quality education, these are mostly built on physical education, but we just have to use the same criteria, but widen the view. Like if you have physical mobility, you look for students going abroad physically, but also think about virtual mobility. But it could be the same criterion, but you have to think about other ways, alternatives for filling these in. And therefore, it's important that we do not have a tick-box system or tick-box system only, but also have a dialogue between the quality agencies and the universities being assessed to discuss the alternatives for the physical solutions, to discuss the alternatives and if these alternatives fit and are of the same quality as regular education. Opportunities within Europe is the educational technology becomes stronger all over Europe. There are many surveys and studies to support innovation. The MOOCs movement was a real boost for online education for all the universities in Europe. And we have European Commission, EU support programs, so that's very helpful within Europe. Threats are, of course, the funding per student is decreasing at national level, and governmental strategies need to be improved, so we hope to have them on board in our dialogue with many more governments. Okay, my final slide is what is to be expected for 2018. It's about a continued dialogue between ED2 and ENQA. Their working group on e-learning is doing a very good job. We had a report yesterday on that. This is up for being published, and it will be presented in our conference in Aarhus in Denmark in October, and publication of ICT focal points on the SWOT analysis of the regions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to George Uvax for this excellent presentation and this European perspective that is very important in the frame of this Congress. So the next speaker this morning is Unolka Umankulova. I hope it's okay. Okay. Unolka is the Executive Director of the EdNet Agency for Quality Assurance in the field of education. She has been working to build an independent accreditation system for higher education in Kyrgyzstan since 2009 in order to improve standards, governance, and access to high-quality education. Unolka's action plan is about putting in place legislative and other systems to improve quality of education, particularly higher education, governance of education interaction of different stakeholders for development of education, and its approach to build a strategy for its exporting. So welcome to this Congress, and okay.
Thank you very much, and first of all I would like to thank for the opportunity to participate in this conference and to come to Ecuador. And to me Ecuador is the same exotic country as I think my country Kyrgyzstan is exotic to Ecuador, first of all because we are quite far away from each other. So I will be speaking about developments and challenges of accreditation of higher education in distance and online education, particularly case of Kyrgyzstan as a Central Asian case. Well, here we are. This is Kyrgyzstan, another big country, and all my presentation is built in a way that every slide has some pictures and brief facts about my country for you to get to know it better, and you could have a general picture of the country. But I will not be speaking about this. I will give you on your own to get acquainted with this, so not to spend time on it. And I will be more speaking about the topic of my presentation. So you will be having the opportunity to meet both and Kyrgyzstan and the situation of distance quality assurance of distance education. Accreditation and e-learning. Actually, accreditation is e-learning itself is a relatively new topic for Central Asia, for Kyrgyzstan particularly. Accreditation, we have been discussing it and establishing it since 2007. But why did we decide it? First of all, due to the previous system that we have had, state attestation, there was no any trust to that existed situation, and the society believed that it doesn't really help to improve the quality of education. That's why we needed to build something new that really could influence on the quality. That's why we decided to implement the independent accreditation, and the discussion started in 2007, as I said. And another thing is that we did have, and we still have, a heritage of the USSR as being a part of the USSR till 1991. So all the educational system was built on that, based on the USSR system. And now we also have the principles, and we stepped forward to the Bologna process. And we had a real question, so where are we now? We refused the previous system that was built on the USSR system. We are trying to adopt a new system that is based on the Bologna principles, but still we're not there, but we're not still in the Bologna educational system. So where are we? That's why the independent accreditation was about to bring and to assess and to give an answer, where are we now and what kind of quality of education do we provide. As for the e-learning, of course, first of all, it was the world trend. Also an approach to fill in the gap in a qualified academia, because in some regional regions of Kyrgyzstan we didn't, and still we have some shortage of really qualified academia, so we wanted to bring it via e-learning. A tool to deal with absent students, yes, this is also as well, because we have migrants, and we needed somehow to continue to give them, provide them qualitative education, and actually distant education was one of the decisions for that. So solvings and organization of document flow as well. Actually, let's say the task to reorganize our academic document flow triggered somehow also the development of e-learning. So briefly talking about development of quality assurance and learning, mainly it started in 2007, as I said. In 2009, a Central Asian Network for Quality Assurance, a project has started. It was a Tempus project where we introduced, actually, started the experience of European Union and established accreditation agencies. In 2012, Our legislation issued a law that obliged to start distant education instead of extramural programs in all the universities. But in 2013, we returned back to the extramural programs because 1 year of distant education showed that our universities was not really technically equipped and ready in skills our academians to be fully integrated in e-learning process. So we decided to integrate it into the law as a programs with usage of technologies for distant education. In 2013, start of CAMEL, it was a project on introduction of quality assurance management in e-learning education, and it was quite successful, and we continue to do this. Many universities participated in it. We established e-learning centers. Then in 2013, it was establishment of Kyrgyz Association for Distant Education. That is very important in Kyrgyzstan in terms of the promotion and lobbying qualitative education and e-learning, distant education online. And in 2018, nowadays, we integrate quality assurance criteria for distance and full-time types of education, meaning that we are embedding, as it was told yesterday, criteria should not be different. Criteria should align with each other. So we're embedding it and trying to integrate it in both. The main streams in this area, first of all, our quality assurance system is based on the EAG, with ESG, we follow ENQA, INQA, EQA requirements, and these are our, let's say, guidelines for establishment of quality assurance. E-learning is relatively new for Central Asia, yes, indeed, I would say maybe for about 5-7 years. We've been implementing the things in e-learning. It's more about blended learning, yes. We don't have a so-called online education still, but it's more about blended learning. Traditional education everywhere uses distance education technologies because it is according to our legislation, and that's how we're, let's say, trying to spread and to deepen the e-learning process. We have the minimum requirements to technical and communication equipment for distance education, and it is in our legislation that supports the qualitative provision of this type of education. And quality is regulated by licensing and independent accreditation. Specifics of quality assurance in Kyrgyzstan. First of all, we consider quality assurance as an improvement tool and then as assessment. So the quality assurance is brought to Kyrgyzstan is really to improve the situation in higher education. It is obligatory for us to have foreign expertise within the accreditation of both distant e-learning or traditional type of education. Perhaps by now independent accreditation is the only approach to monitor and to assess quality of e-learning by now. Yes, because we do it via independent accreditation tools. Ministry of Education does not really participate in the assessment of quality of distant education particularly, so this is our task mainly. Our strategy as the agency is gradually, annually, meaning annually, to increase requirements for quality assurance education. So every year we increase the requirements for education to our universities so they could gradually improve their quality, because we understand that we cannot put now the very high level standards to our university because they're not got used to a new system and they need some time to be adjusted to this. So gradually we're strengthening the standards. National Accreditation Committee that is under the Ministry of Education and is obliged to assess actual accreditation agencies, they themselves need some trainings about quality assurance and actual distant education that we actually do. What do we have by now? One of the best practices is the introduction of AVN. AVN, it is an authorized learning management system that was developed by our program, by our IT specialist programists. And it was developed specially for universities in order they could organize distant education and organize internal academic interactions between the structures for provision of qualitative distant education and traditional education. By now, AVN is used almost by all of the universities, and it is upgrading all the time, and it is the main tool now for our universities to really internally ensure the quality of this type of education. Education portals based on Moodle. In many cases, Moodle is a management system as well, as you know, for that. Our universities is very much active due to some shortage in finances, etc. They're trying to work closer with Google educational apps and platforms, and they're provided with that. So they're using these particular approaches to provide and to ensure quality and to provide distance education. Teleteaching and e-learning and medical education, particularly telemedicine, is very relevant question, is a very relevant aspect for us, and our universities is very much active in this area. E-learning centers in universities are established, and they're only now starting their activities, but there is already some very good progress in that. A number of e-learning courses in each university have already established, and they are now they're running now very qualitatively, because all these e-learning courses, they were developed in partnership with our European partners. Yes, we still have some problems of overcoming of resistance in terms of the external assessment and quality assurance, the standards, the requirements that we put. It is, first of all, resistance that comes from academic society. Gradually, a new expert community is being formed that is different in regard to the principles of work. Yes, because quality assurance required completely different principles of assessment that our society didn't used to, and we're trying to embed it and develop it in a correct way. Most of the initiatives in this area initially were supported by European Union's projects, particularly Tempus and Erasmus Plus projects. Also, we have a very good support from our German partners, Konrad Adenauer, GIZ projects, DAD, and others. There are many interactions and actually initiatives on the university level. So I would say that all this development were triggered not from the ministerial level, but from a grassroots, let's say, from bottom-up approach from universities, from our international partners, and then it reached the ministerial level. Our agency in that area plays an important role, since we're leading in developing the policies and quality assurance and the standards and legislation for that. We develop specific requirements and standards for programs that use technologies for distant education, and we embed it in our criteria, and we of course study the international experience in this area. Development of CONQUA, this is the Central Asian Network for Quality Assurance, where ADNET agency is the chair organization for that, and we're developing in order to organize and unite Central Asian countries for having a common vision of the tendencies and developments in this area. We elaborate manuals and guidelines for e-learning internal quality assurance for Kyrgyzstan, first of all, particularly because we have many peculiarities, many history distinguishing features that we need to take into consideration in order to be sure that distance education, e-learning in Kyrgyzstan takes into consideration all of these areas for qualitative development. And yes, we train academia, teaching staff, experts in terms of how to move forward to them. Though some way has already been passed, still we have really serious challenges to overcome and to deal with in order to ensure that actual quality assurance system and distance education works in a good way. First of all, I should say that in Kyrgyzstan, and I think in many countries, it can be applied as well, that demand and requirements to e-learning is growing faster than changes happen in the mind and skills of academia. Yes, because we cannot catch up the development and progress in distant education in terms of the skills that needed to be developed in academic society, and first of all in their desire to be changed and to change their teaching methodologies. We're now changing them. The teaching methodologies were due to transforming to a two-cycle education system, and it takes really much time, much efforts, and it's stressful, of course, but now we have to change them as how to teach in an effective way in a distance education. And I must confess that IT communication and IT progress is faster than our academic society in this area. 2/3 of the population has access to internet, so though we're in the second place in the CEA in terms of the coverage, the first place is for Kazakhstan. Still, not all of the country is covered by internet, and first of all because of the infrastructure that we have there, IT infrastructure, but we're working and we have it in the strategy of our country that till 2020, all the country must be covered in this. That also influence on development of e-learning process. Most of the problems for e-learning development are connected with countrywide strategy. Yes, that is first of all IT communication, IT infrastructure, internet coverage, etc. That is not purely depend on the universities, but more the country's government strategy on the development of the country. Understanding of e-learning process by academia, many members and representatives of academic society consider e-learning as a part of the evening education, and we're changing it, that no, it's completely different. It's not everywhere, but some in the remote regions still such understanding exists. IT literacy of academic society, yes, as well. This is a problem in some cases, especially in remote regions, where we need to teach them in IT literacy, IT infrastructure, as I said. And, well, that's what I said. E-learning in many cases considered as extramural programs, and we need to change it as well. And we're making quite big efforts, first of all, as initiation between the agencies, independent organizations, NGOs, and universities. We develop it, we initiate, and then we come to the ministry, and the ministry supports us in terms of this development. That's why e-learning now is in the strategy, education development strategy of Kyrgyzstan 2020. The last slide, just some more photos of universities of Kyrgyzstan for you to have the idea how they look like. And we have 54 universities, about 250,000 students, and so much work to do. And we're very much open to, we work with international partners in this area, of course. All of our universities are quite actively integrated into international community and working, and in terms of the working and development, all these areas. But we're trying to go in line with developments that are happening in ESG, in NQAS policies, because we are, as I said, we adopted Bologna principles to our education system. So that's all that I wanted to share with you. Thanks. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Nalka Umankulova, for your talk, for this perspective from Kyrgyzstan, and also in some way a good perspective from Asia as well. So the next speaker this morning is Professor Israel Adu. He was a former Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Agriculture in Abeokuta, Niger. He was Consult Academic Planning at the National Open University of Nigeria and Dean of the School of Postgraduate Students at the same university. He is the immediately past director of the Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency of the African Council of Distant Education. So welcome this morning. It's a pleasure that you be here.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start my presentation by appreciating UTPL for extending their invitation to us in Africa to come and share experience and perhaps get more information about the advances in the area of open and learning education. We thank you. My topic is assuring quality in open and distance learning in Africa. The processes that we have developed, the challenges, and the commitments. Africa is a continent that is in a hurry to develop, and human resource development is key to that aspiration because it's the agent of transformation and emancipation. We know that the globalization of knowledge generally has created the problem of access, quality, cost, and equity. And I must confess that these challenges, the impact of it is very, very heavy on our continent. Because in Africa, the population is very high. It's about 1 billion as of now. 75% of this is rural, and about 70% of that population is under the age of 25, which means there's going to be a higher demand for education. And the worry is that with about 3% growth rate annually, we may double our population by the year 2050. In that continent, there's high illiteracy rate. In fact, by 2011 census, it was about 70% illiteracy rate. We have low participation. As at the time that we are preparing this document, just about 5.6% of the population have access to higher education. This is compared to figures like 71% in Europe and America, and a little lower percentage in Asia and the Pacific countries. On top of this, we have shortage of teachers and lecturers. The economy, as we know, generally is very, very poor. 30% of the world's population reside in that continent. Amongst all these challenges is the vision of the African Union to get their goal of education for all, in addition to the MDGs as at that time, but now the SDGs. Therefore, the ministers of education in the continent got together, knowing these challenges, to find out how they can turn around the situation for the continent. It was concluded that we must have a more innovative way of education delivery if we must meet our target. And therefore, they adopted the use of ODL in their educational delivery. The African Council for Distance Education, an NGO comprising of higher institutions that are involved in expanding access through ODL, came together and discussed the two main challenges identified by honorable ministers. The ministers have identified 8 challenges for ODL in Africa, but they consider 2 of those challenges primary that we have to attend to urgently. And therefore, ACD took that challenge and established 2 agencies, one for collaboration and one for quality assurance, to look at the challenges. I was opportuned to be the director of quality assurance, and that work started honestly in the year 2010. The mandate that ACD gave us, that gave to ACD, is that we must develop and implement a quality assurance instrument, both for institutional audit as well as program accreditation that can be used throughout Africa. That was our mandate. And as at the time we were starting that program, we did not want to reinvent the wheel, so to say, because we are aware there's a lot of these documents that are already on the net. So what we decided to do was to collect samples of these toolkits that are on the net, and we have about 8 of them. And in the course of intensive workshop, we look through all the 8 to see the one that we can easily internalize and contextualize to meet our demands in Africa. After that intensive workshop, we decided to adopt the UNESCO Coal DEMT Toolkit. The DEMT means Asian Distant Education Modernization Project in Sri Lanka. We adopted to internalize that document because of some reasons that were very apparent in that something in the document. We discovered that the criteria standards, the indicators and performance measure reflect current global practices. The criteria based on common core processes and practices in ODL. That document covers a full range of distant delivery methods from print to online. The scope covered by the criteria were well defined. That document encouraged developing capacity for institutional self-improvement and building a culture of quality. That framework is flexible and can accommodate ODL provisions in contextually specific environments. Toolkit has undergone several reviews with input from international quality assurance experts. That toolkit can be used by both either new or old institutions. And finally, toolkit was designed for easy contextualization. Because of these advantages over all the others, decided to pick on that, and we worked on it. That document that we have developed is in 3 parts. The first one, we identified about 11 and 9 criteria that represent salient features and elements in ODL for institutional audit as well as program accreditation. The beauty of our program is that each of those components that we have identified can stand on their own. But before I continue, the process that we have adopted was, because Africa is a large continent, we agreed to work on regional basis. After we have made a draft of the toolkit, we took it to each of the regions for them to buy into it, make inputs and corrections. After we have gone through all the regions, we put the corrections together and produced one document and took it back to them to be sure that they buy into it and they all agreed. After that stage, we now invited a group of international quality assurance experts to help us validate the instrument that we have developed. And having passed that stage, we now called all the regulatory agencies in Africa to look at the document so that they can buy into it and adopt the use of this document in their various countries. And after that stage, we took it to the board of ACD that approved it and to the Organization of African Unity that endorsed that document for use throughout ODL institutions in Africa. The criteria, standards, and performance indicators for institutional audit in that document. Those are the criteria that we have identified, I think about 11 of them. Number of criteria standards, each of them 21, associated 26, 77. Then number of performance indicators under each of those standards. The numbers are those stated. So those are 10 for institutional audit. For program accreditation, we have about 9. See the number of criteria standards as well as the number of performance indicators that we have developed for each of those criteria. And we have a total of 410 criteria standards as well as 333 performance indicators. How do we confer ownership on documents? Just as I have said, toolkit was presented to all stakeholders for their interrogation, for their buy-in, and for their adoption. Also mentioned about the issue of the International Reference Group and approval by the AU and the board. The document can be found at that website that is cited here. To further support our argument or our position, we developed a quality assurance policy framework. It's a generic document so that that toolkit can be easily be used and enhance proficiency in its implementation. And the objective is to further inculcate a culture of quality and continuous self-improvement in ODL practices in Africa. That policy identified 10 main areas in ODL practice, a statement and a set of operational parameters. We encourage each institution to develop their own policy using the ACD policy guideline framework as a guide. That's just an example of what we have in that profile. The policy statement for learner profile, for example, is that institutions should ensure that there is a feedback mechanism in place such that students can have information about their course development and student support services. A host of parameters following. We also do, in ACD2, we also do the accreditation and certification as well. The ACD characterizes each the quality assurance as a fitness for purpose, value for money, learner transformation in the context of fitness for purpose. We carry out institutional audit as well as program accreditation. And the program guideline, what we do is that the institution will invite ACD to come and do audit for them. We'll send to them a set of forms that we call self-appraisal form with relevant documents. Then, after we have agreed on a date, the ACD will put up an external peer review team to visit that institution. The team will spend about 4 days in that institution, and at the end of it, you have to make an informed and constructive evaluation of the self-appraisal form that was completed by the university using oral evidence, interviews, information, and observation. The team thereafter submits a report to ACD, clearly identifying the strengths, the weaknesses, areas of improvement, and a clear statement on their judgment for that institution. And that judgment can either be satisfactory, marginal, or unsatisfactory. The board, on receiving that report, depending on what is on that report, will issue a certificate to that institution either for 5 years, if it is satisfactory, or 2 years, if it is marginal. And of course, no certificate for unsatisfactory institutions, which means after 5 years or after 2 years, the ACD should go back again to reevaluate their system. What are the challenges that we have faced or are still facing? The first one is the management of access There are many activities that are involved, many participants, detailed planning, and of course, the budgeting. As we know, there's an increasingly reduced pure distance between institutions and learners today. There's always the challenge of the use of a mixture of technologies in delivery and learning. We have the challenge of common understanding of what quality assurance across all the regions of the continent. We have a low capacity human resource capacity. Of course, the economy is poor, the infrastructure is poor, internet connectivity is equally poor. A major challenge is the desperate educational system in the continent. As I said, we have the Anglophone, the Arabophone, as well as the Portuguese speaking groups. So for us to have a consensus under that condition becomes a bit difficult. But the beauty of it is that that toolkit as of today has been translated into the major languages in the continent, in English, in French, in Portuguese, and in Arabic. What are the commitments? The first commitment is that the Organization of African Unity has adopted ODL, and they are working, supporting assiduously to make sure that it works to support the challenges or the problems of Africa. For it to work, we must get the commitment of the leadership that is very, very innovative. We must develop effective channels of communication. And of course, we develop trust, honesty, and transparency in our operations. We have also, as a way, to make sure that these things are entrenched in institutions, that each institution should have a quality assurance unit in their universities. To further encourage universities, and as a commitment on the part of ACD and the AU, we have introduced what we call a reward system for good performing institutions. Part of our commitment to be sure that every part of the continent is carried along is that that toolkit has been translated into the 4 main languages of Africa. We believe, and we are committed to it, that the toolkit is a work in progress. In fact, the outcome of this conference will tell us the areas where we need to make improvement on our toolkit. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Adu, for your presentation. And the next speaker this morning is Professor Bett. Professor Bett is a PhD in engineer from University of London, Imperial College of London, and he has also a degree at the University of Dar es Salaam. Professor Bett was Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic of the Open University of Tasmania, and also he was a Vice Chancellor at the Open University of Tasmania. Yeah, between the last 2 years, he is now the immediate past president of the Council of Pan-African Universities, and he was in charge in this position during the last 2 years. So you are welcome to this conference, and we are very happy that you are here. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation will be on Africa again. However, I will take a slightly different approach to the presentation by Professor Adu, in the sense that I will look at the attempt of Africa to undertake accreditation in 3 levels, starting from the institution, the programs, and art course levels. And my presentation outline will deal with a little bit of history of ODL in Africa. I just want to share with our colleagues here, here in Latin America, the fact that Africa is not very advanced, but Africa is one of the very first institutions to be involved in ODL in the world, not only within Africa. So I look at a little bit of history, but I also want to share with you, knowing that Africa is a continent with 55 countries, how we are managing to coordinate ourselves within the limited constraints which are there. I'll also look into how the efforts that have been explained by Professor Adu, they complement the role of the national regulatory organs in the process of regulating the delivery institutions. I will also take time to discuss with you the challenges that are faced by the different entities. You will see that they are not very different from those which are discussed by my colleagues. But I will start by reminding you that if you look at the history, the first university that was charged with the task of offering distance education, albeit initially as an agent of the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, was in South Africa in the year 1873. The University of the Cape of Good Hope was established as an agency for examinations for the Oxford and Cambridge. This university moved on in 1946. The university was given the role of offering distance education in South Africa. This was during the colonial time of Africa. However, the university shifted to Pretoria, and in the year 2004, it merged with the former Technical in South Africa, as well as they mainstreamed the former Visitor University to form UNISA. UNISA, which is now established as a university in Africa with the biggest number of students. By the year 2017, the university had 551 students. Now, other African ODL institutions were established between 1990s and the year 2000. These include the universities in Tanzania, the National Open University of Nigeria, and other universities in Africa. Now, just to give you some idea how Africa is organized, as you know, Africa did operate as a continent under the Organization of African Unity, which was established in 1963 in Addis Ababa. However, this institution, OAU, was succeeded by a new institution called the African Union, which was launched in July 2002 in South Africa. Now, the African Union Commission is the continental secretariat for the African Union. So when you talk about African Union, you should know that the Secretariat for African Union is the African Union Commission. And the guiding documents for development of Africa, they are in the documents that are called Agenda 2063, TISA 2024, and CISA 2016-2025. These documents really chart out the Africa that we want in the future up to the year 2063. And it's important to be aware that to improve coordination of operation of Africa, Africa is split into 5 regions: the southern region, the eastern, central, northern, and the west region, to simplify coordination efforts at continental level. Now, what is important is for me to just highlight to you the roles of the regional entities that I have mentioned in the 5 sub-regions. These entities, we call them regional economic communities, or RECs, and they coordinate the AU through some committees that are called the sector technical committees at an African level. And for the purpose of open distance learning, there is a committee, STC, on science, education, and technology. And therefore, the regional bodies, the RECs, their reports to the STC. And then the STC is the one which would let and report to the Committee of Foreign Ministers called Executive Council. And the Executive Council is the one which reports these reports on ODL to the presidents. Now, I just want to share with you very briefly how Africa is organized at an African level as a higher education institution. There is an institution that is called the Association of African Universities, AAU. This is a voluntary membership organization at an African level which works very closely with the African Union, and its task is to build the capacity of African universities. Now, on the area of quality assurance at an African level, the AAU formed an entity called AFRICON, which is an African network that was set up by AAU in collaboration with the Global Quality Assurance Agency, as well as UNESCO, with the purpose of enhancement of the quality of higher education. And the members include all regulatory bodies of higher education in Africa. So this is called AFRICON. Now, ICD has been explained by Professor Adu. I will not spend much time, but I just want to remind you that this institution was established in the year 2004. Right now, the institution has well over 40 members for universities, and it also has associate members and individual members. Now, the main task of ACD has been explained by Professor Adu. I shall not repeat it. But just to tell you how ACD is working with the African Union. The ACD has an observer status in the African Union, and therefore it has an MOU with both the African Union as well as the AAU. And the ACD does play an active role in ensuring capacity building in quality assurance amongst the institutions in Africa, the other modes of delivery. And therefore, what is very important is that the problems that have been discussed by all speakers since yesterday of the National Regulatory Agency having ignorance in ODL do emanate when there are difficulties of accreditation. And now, to ensure that the ODL and online programs are evaluated fairly, members of evaluation teams that follow self-evaluation, they need to have a very good knowledge of delivery in ODL to avoid problems that can come from their lack of knowledge. Now, just to give you a quick overview of Africa in the different sub-regions, I can say that the Eastern Africa sub-region is the region that has the most comprehensive quality assurance framework at an African level, comparable to the Latin American and Caribbean program that was developed some years ago. But in terms of ODL delivery, of the 5 sub-regions in Africa, the Southern African region is the region that has the most advanced framework and also policies at national level. Some may not be approved, but they have some form of draft ODL policies. So at an African level, we look at this region of Southern Africa, which is called SADC countries sometimes, as the most advanced. The rest of the African sub-regions in the northern, west, and central, they do have institutions, but the coordination of their ODL efforts is not very active. And I shall not spend any time on the toolkit, which has been explained by Adu, but just to share with you how Africa has used the ACD as well as other toolkits. I'm aware that COL has funded capacity building workshops in Africa where the participants were trained in using the COL RIM Quality Assurance Toolkit based on the revised COL manual of 2014. However, within the quality assurance area, as explained by Dr. George Ahmad this morning, ADTU has developed 2 quality assurance levels with e-excellence as a framework with several tools, as well as the open up add quality assurance tools, which are a set of tools that can be used. Now, how is Africa using the ACD and other quality assurance evaluation tools? I believe that the capacity building in use of other quality assurance toolkits has not been undertaken comprehensively on the African continent. The most cost-effective approach would always be to use the regional coordination agencies to be able to move this ahead. Now, what are the challenges that are faced by the national regulatory agencies? To date, the national regulatory organs are facing the critical problem of failing to mainstream ODL and online delivery modes in their evaluation, certification, and accreditation process. And what we are seeing is that most universities nowadays have adopted what we call blended mode of delivery, where they use a little bit of face-to-face as well as a variety of e-learning and other electronic accesses. Therefore, to talk about the use of a pure residential system, we are talking about an old system. Now, other challenges include the use of the MOOCs programs. These we find that regulatory organs find these delivery programs difficult because they do not have clearly explained admission criteria. Therefore, they find it difficult to recognize qualifications coming from MOOCs. And online learning is again more prone to cheating during the examination process, and therefore you need many digital precautions have to be taken to make sure the delivery is correct. And I think our colleague from Australia explained how much investment one has to make to ensure you use well modern technologies. Again, limited investment in ICT technologies is also a challenge. And other challenges include lack of capacity of the national agencies to evaluate, accredit, and certify ODL and online programs that do not include examinations. I'm looking at the developments. There are many course programs that nowadays do not include examinations. They include other modes of assessment. Therefore, the challenge is that the institutions are moving faster than the regulatory organs. Now, inability to recognize prior learning. This is a problem that has been mentioned by several speakers. And also, I want to stress the problem that we have. In Africa, with 55 countries, as you know, once you start having cross-border education, there are many problems that are there. So the absence of sub-regional frameworks for recognition of qualifications is a major problem. Therefore, attempts for the regulatory organ of the receiving country wishing to introduce parallel evaluation, accreditation, certification, and extra taxation becomes a hindrance to adopting programs from other countries. What are the lessons that have been learned? Number one, some African governments do not recognize ODL and online delivery modes. Hence, the qualification of their nationals who have graduated through such a mode may not be recognized back home. Secondly, some professional organizations do not yet recognize qualifications that are offered in these two modes, the ODL and the online modes, purely because maybe sometimes it does not involve actual physical training, which the organizations think important. So some African governments do not recognize prior learning or open admission criteria, and there is also an urgent need to build capacity of the regulatory organs in all African countries, including those which involve the ministries. And I would like to say that Africa is different from Latin America and Caribbean countries, but as you can see, the nature of problems that we are facing are very similar. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the UTLP for facilitating my attendance of this conference. Here I note the Chancellor, Maria Morocho and Karina, and the other team members. But I also want to acknowledge the University of Dar es Salaam and the government of the United Republic of Tanzania for granting me the permission to attend this conference. Indeed, the experience, I'm sure, has been very positive. I thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you, Professor Beth, for your your talk, and also thank you to all the speakers this morning to share the perspective on quality assurance from different countries, for different contexts. And I think it's very important to have in this table all these point of view, all these different situations to share. So now it's time for questions. Well, we have some few questions, and I think one is particularly important because it's, I think it's for all the speakers. Please just to give a short answer that just all have the chance to talk. And the question is about the innovation. So we are looking for innovation in distant education, and one of the persons here in the audience is asking if how this innovation can solve different challenges. For example, what about medicine? So through all this innovation, it's possible to offer medicine online or distant education. What is your opinion about this? I don't know. You want to start?
Yeah.
So,
I don't understand the question.
it's about the innovation. So how this innovation, if it's
in relation to medicine?
just to offer something that is not traditional, offering online like medicine, is possible through the innovation.
To teach medicine. Yeah, when you're looking, so if you're looking into innovation education by online methods, you always have to find, and that's also important for the quality agencies to check, where is the right balance in offering the face-to-face part and the online part. So it could be recommendable to have the part of the skills part, the laboratory parts, in a face-to-face setting, on-campus setting. On the other hand, we see also within our network that there are virtual laboratories being developed, and we are trying to promote the development of these laboratories, virtual laboratories, at certain universities, and share them rather than developing these in copies with each other. So these are quite specific and expensive virtual laboratories. So to create a system of sharing these between the network of universities.
For Kyrgyzstan, it is a very relevant topic, and by now, for example, our agency works with 2 universities where they deliver medical education, and particularly we're considering about the introduction of the telemedicine. And I would say that for our universities, from technical point of view, it seems to be easier, from innovative point of view, it seems to be easier to implement telemedicine rather than when considering ethical norms and ethical rules of medicine to make this happen. Because for example, to conduct operations that are conducted in another country and to look it through the telemedicine, we found out that there are so many gaps in the legislation that could somehow regulate the ethical side of this issue and other things. This is the first thing. The second thing is, of course, the innovations in terms of the experimental laboratories, the different moulage, we call it, that are used in medicine. Our universities are using it quite a lot, and that really helps to improve the quality. And the third area in that is the OSCE, so-called in medicine, that is an approach to pass medical exams using OSCE. It's all over the world it is used, and we're trying to implement it using innovative approaches, innovations. And first of all, it is connected to IT, to communications, and to internet access as well, because OSCE, it's an exam that provides to make a to assess a comprehensive knowledge and skills of medical specialists, and we want to implement it between different regions of Kyrgyzstan. For example, in Osh State University we have it in one region, but the teachers could conduct OSCE exams from another region of Kyrgyzstan using the distance education system. So these are the approaches and tendencies in Kyrgyzstan. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that innovation is dynamic. If you look back at where we started open assistant learning, that's not where we are today. We continue to make improvement over improvement. I'm aware today there are laboratories on air. There are people are earning degrees in engineering online, and I'm sure I've not heard about that of medicine, but I'm sure it's on the way. What we should do is, one, to share knowledge, share advancements, because we cannot be all at the same level of advancement. So when we share information, others will be able to copy good things and put into practice. I'm sure as of now, people are busy on how they can perfect these things and make it work better. So the world is dynamic, knowledge is dynamic, it's never static. The important thing is let us follow on development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to share very briefly that the importance of ODL institutions working collaboratively can lead to very positive, innovative attainment, in the sense that when institutions work collaboratively together, they can attain much more than when every institution invests on its own. I'll give you a simple example. In ACD, one institution was given the task of preparing a curriculum on a new course that will become a MOOCs, which will look into digital fluency of academic staff in universities. So one institution prepared the curriculum, the others did discuss and adopt the curriculum, and it was agreed that instead of every institution starting their own MOOCs, they should use a common curriculum, and then they would develop a common MOOCs that would always be customized by every institution, instead of every institution spending money to develop the same curriculum. So I see that the chance of innovation becomes very high, with very high possibilities of economies of scale when the ODL institutions work together without fear of the distance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. And the next is a question for Onalkan, and is about how Moodle can help to QA process in learning programs, and there is indicators that you can get from Moodle.
How what?
Moodle.
Ah, Moodle, okay. How Moodle
can help to the QA process.
QA process.
Yeah.
Well, in our universities, well, of course, every university, they adjust Moodle according to their preferences and requirements, but one of their approaches is to organize a documentation flow as well, because in order to upload the documents into the Moodle system and to organize this, you have to follow a certain requirements, a certain process of organization, and a certain information must be integrated in the system. And in some cases we found out that the basic information that needed to be without Moodle system, it was absent in some universities, and that's why it helps the universities first of all to understand how they can build their courses and what kind of information and linkages between the disciplines or between the courses must be binded in order it could be correctly integrated into Moodle systems. So mainly it is concerned about this, and as we all understand that correct documentation flow is one of the basic principles for quality assurance as well.
Okay. So thank you to all the speakers this morning. Just to keep the time, we are going to to stop now this session. Now I think it's time for a breakfast and for a break, yeah, for a small break. And so thank you all for to take part. Thank you.
De la presente mesa en esta mañana, a los participantes queremos agradecerles. A los estudiantes queremos mencionarles que tienen que realizar el registro antes de ir al coffee y de la misma manera al regresar. A los participantes externos, invitarles a la parte derecha del Centro de Convenciones para el receso correspondiente. En 30 minutos estamos de regreso para continuar con la quinta mesa de ponencias.